Video game magazines were a huge part of how I got access to news and rumors when I was younger in the 90s. I love them. I used to have a lot larger collection. Sadly, a lot of those got some water damage, but today I do want to focus on one for my collection that's very specific, and that's the December 1995 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly. I mean, look at the subject matter. It's aliens, but during this time, there was a lot going on in the video game world, so let's dive in and see what's all in this magazine. And just as soon as you flip open the pages, you see the rumor mill for the Ultra 64 already stirring. And this is where they talk about they had to change the name to Nintendo 64 because of a copyright issue in Japan. You'll see a lot of ads in here, and here's a really gross one for Gex, Mouthful of Bees. It sounds like a shoegaze band, Mouthful of Bees. A really cool ad for Doom, and you'll see multiple Doom ads in the magazine. But I love the art on this one. That's really killer. All the systems they talk about, and quite the variety, as you can see. And that's what's so great about this time period, is there was so much going on, and it was awesome. Namco was bringing their arcade experiences home, and Namco is a huge supporter of the PlayStation, and I really feel like Ridge Racer and Tekken, these games, they help sell a lot of PlayStations, and they're, by all accounts, pretty decent ports. I mean, they got better. Most definitely Tekken 3 is like perfect in my opinion, but I think Namco is a big reason why so many PlayStations were sold. Here's Nintendo with just a wacky idea, like online network multiplayer gaming. I don't think it's ever going to take off. You may want to put your attention somewhere else. This little article talks about the Panasonic 3DO's rumored 64-bit add-on, which never saw the light of day. Nintendo's Virtual Boy. I mean, chalk it up there with online play. It's just not going to pan out till many years later. But they started slashing the prices of the Virtual Boy pretty quick. I remember renting mine at Blockbuster. Nice little ad for Blockbuster there. And I like this ad for Mortal Kombat 3. You get Sub-Zero unmasked there. A lot of hype around that game for sure. For sure. Oh boy, the Tiger R Zone. I think neat concept, but technology just wasn't going to allow for augmented reality to be much better than that, I don't think. But hey, they at least mention it in here. And here's a big one, the debut of the Ultra 64 controller. And this blew my mind when I saw it, and I think I'd never seen anything like that before. One, the controller was just so alien, and it kind of does have that Geiger-esque design, but I remember reading this article, and I was sold. I was committed to saying Nintendo 64 was my console moving forward, and so that's where all my attention went over the next year or so before it came out. And a really cool article. Really, really neat. Imagine ripping this piece of paper out and taking it to the arcade to play Go Waxier, just so you got all the combos right. Hey, they've got you covered. Reviews? For sure, man. This was the review crew, and this was our outlet for reviews. Man, this is how we figured out what games were halfway decent most of the time, unless you rented them, which I did a lot, or just rolled the dice and bought them. But a lot of love for Twisted Metal here, rightfully so. Spawn, an average beat 'em up, and I think that they're fair for it there. But they love Twisted Metal, and I think it was a big seller for the PlayStation for sure. What wasn't a big seller was Waterworld for the Genesis, because it never actually was released. I talk about that on my Waterworld movie merchandise video, so you check that out. Wolfenstein 3 for the 3DO. Hey, that's a decent score for a 3DO game, and actually all those scores are decent for the 3DO. So hanging around there, they're trying. Oof, Blue Lightning, yeah. They say the Lynx version is better, actually, in this article. So that tells you something. Here's Atari's new CD attachment, and the handheld, which preceded it, has a better game. So the old joke, Doom, you can play Doom on anything, and you really can. And honestly, that started back during this time. I mean, Doom was out for everything. Oh boy, okay. I know I mentioned that advertising in the 90s started pushing the boundaries, and 3DO just said, we're going to push all the boundaries and all the buttons to try to sell systems. They're claiming to have it all here. Ladies and gentlemen, violence, weapons, San Francisco, men in tights, I don't even know. And I think it's a desperation move, obviously, but it's wacky to think that this was out there for kids to look at. And I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that scandalous, but that's how they were they were marketing to everyone. And here's another one, right? Maybe if you didn't play with your worms so much, you wouldn't have problems in the bedroom, is what they're implying. So yeah, he needs to quit playing Earthworm Jim for sure. And of course, Nintendo has a different approach to advertising, as we see here. Still trying to sell Virtual Boys. I still really enjoy mine. I think it's fun. It's a niche market, though, I must say, so it's not for everyone. No magazine's complete without some cheats. Here's a cheat sheet for Street Fighter, but even more interesting over here to the right is more information about the 3DO's M2 add-on, and that Mortal Kombat 3 would be releasing with exclusive content for the 3DO M2. Yeah, sad days. It never came out. We got Sega Saturn's approach to advertising. I love they got Ice Cube in there. He's got some very intimidating words for you to get on board with the Saturn, but the games look pretty. The Saturn has really become one of my favorite systems over time. I didn't own one back during this time period, but still love it. Look at this. I may actually use this cheat. I didn't know about this one. It's for the Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Sega CD. Here's Atlus's approach to advertising. It's like, hey, if you have a Saturn, if you have a PlayStation, doesn't matter to us. We're going to make games for both. So you can really choose either, and either way is going to be great for you. And ironically, this ad for the Atari Jaguar, a Jaguar was the elephant in the room, and they just couldn't hang with the Saturn and definitely not the PlayStation. It's unfortunate because there's some decent games, and I'm happy to own one now. Cool 2-page spread about Waterworld for the Super Nintendo, which oddly enough never came out in the States. But it's a really good game. I played it on my Waterworld episode, and these guys here at Electronic Gaming Monthly really enjoyed it, and rightfully so. I stand by it. It's a really fun experience. And this is where a lot of us probably lost part of our collection we wish we had back for ads like this by Electronic Boutique saying, hey, give us your old stuff, and we'll slash the price of the new PlayStation. And hey, I'm guilty. It's an enticing offer, but I think it's funny to see things like this. I love this ad for Twisted Metal. That clown in the background is super spooky with that dripping blood red lettering. Such a cool game. This little article talking about Virtual Fighter 2 is finally here for the Saturn, but unfortunately I think it was a little too late by that point. I love the Saturn, but again, Sony just really came into the industry with a bang. And we've made it to the cover story, Alien Trilogy. You saw it on the cover. Great subject matter for me here at 2 Day Rentals. Aliens is my favorite movie. So this was a preview of the game. The game came out in April 1996. Again, this issue was in December 95. So you're lurking around that 10-year anniversary of the Aliens movie. And really, that's kind of what you got here. This is like a puzzle action shooter. It says it's Alien Trilogy, but really it's an Aliens game. And the article goes on to talk about how scary it can be lurking in the corners and how well the aliens respond and everything like that. And I have to agree. It's a fun experience. Definitely worth checking out. If you own a Saturn or PlayStation, you can play it on both those consoles. And man, this takes me back. These always fascinated me when I was younger. It was the marketplace ads where people would buy out ad space for their company. This one here was called Chips and Bits, and you could buy, sell, trade all your games, upgrade. You could import things, get rid of your old, really rare games that you didn't know were rare, and buy new stuff. And sometimes they would have pre-orders. This one in particular has pre-orders available. If you send them your money, I'm not sure how the transaction worked. I didn't do a ton of business with these back in the day. Of course, I was a lot younger, but what's really fascinating is they've got the Ultra 64 for pre-order. That's cool. But man, I remember seeing this when I was younger. Look at that first game available for pre-order. Alien vs. Predator. We never got an Alien vs. Predator game for the Nintendo 64. What happened? What is this game? And I remember being excited when I was a kid thinking maybe it's the port of the Jaguar game, but I would love to know more about that. I've looked and still have not found anything about Alien vs. Predator for the Nintendo 64. Here's a preview for Highlander on the Jaguar CD. Yeah, that game's not very good. It looked like it had promise, but I'm sure lots of people were bamboozled by that one. Sad. Here's Warhawk. This was a huge game for the PlayStation 1. I believe it came out in November of 95. And I mean, look at that. It's no reason why the PlayStation just really made a statement when it was launched. This ad cracks me up. So look at the teeth on this xenomorph. I think it's intentional though, but it's really funny. And this is an advertisement for the interactive comic book, the Aliens game for the PC, which I've sadly never played, but it looks like it could be some fun. Oh, Nintendo, here's their take on edgy advertising, and to me, it just looks like you're kind of crapping on your system. But again, more gross and grotesque ads from the '90s. Prototypes. Look how cool this is. I think this is Symphony of the Night. They're calling it Dracula X, but that's so cool to see these. It's a preview for Jack Brothers for the Virtual Boy, arguably one of its best games, but also one of its most rare games. The US version of this game goes for like maybe a couple thousand by now. I don't really know. I'm a big From Software fan, so it was really neat seeing this preview for Kingsfield 2. It's a cool little article. They talk about when you get a chance to play this game, pick a kind of a gloomy, rainy day and go explore the land. And I kind of agree, but neat to see that. Just below, you have an advert for TurboZone. Their dealings were primarily or basically exclusively in TurboGrafx and PC Engine stuff, so you can import a lot of stuff from them back in the day. Revolution X. This game was fun in the arcade, but looking back on it now, it's just really kind of a stupid game. On the right-hand side, you have Fox Hunt, and this is Capcom's full-motion video game, or their first dive into that. So fascinating, the letters of the month, but even more fascinating is their sort of first step into the virtual world as far as the internet's concerned. So talking about the launch of their website, nuke.com, I wonder what nuke.com is today. But so crazy to see this because things have just changed dramatically, and I think that they probably saw this as a way to connect with readers. A lot of the letters that came in here were via the internet, so props to these people for being on it. This guy right here, this is a really interesting letter. He talks about how he's really disappointed in the Saturn and the PlayStation launch, how there's no games, and that he works in a rental store and there is just no interest in this sort of 32-bit wave of 3D graphics coming through, blah, 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 blah. And, these systems were just released a few months prior. I mean, the PlayStation came out in September of 95. So I think that there was quite a bit considering, and I don't know, I think he's a little harsh. And this huge two-page spread on nuke.com, the internetwork. Oh boy, it's just funny. And so yeah, they're about to launch nuke.com, and it's going to be a big deal for them. They think this internet thing may take off, and I think they were right. And so here you see it's like all new internet channels, more than 4,000 pages of info online. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of info. I wonder if the internet can handle it back then. But I don't think that I was really heavily surfing the web until maybe about a year later. So this was before I was really connected, maybe a little bit, but I think when we got AOL, that changed things for my family. But yeah, interesting to see that piece of history. If you picked up a video game magazine in the 90s, I know you saw the contest to win that entire setup, and you drooled over it, right? And what's crazy is I have all those systems now today, and I would have never thought some almost 30 years ago that would even be a thing. But I'm lucky enough over the years I've collected all those because I wanted to play them then, and I still want to play them now. And imagine winning all that back in the day. That's just something, and it cracks me up. Here's a concerned reader. Did companies forget about 3DO owners? Maybe. I think they kind of did, and it's sad, but you had too much competition between the Saturn and the PlayStation and the N64 just right around the corner. Still a fun system, though. Give us an idea for a new game. I've got tons of ideas for Virtual Boy games. You can do an Aliens game. Obviously, I'm going to say that, but I think you could have done some neat stuff with a Virtual Boy, and I think it's just sad that they didn't listen to more of the people that maybe no one submitted ideas. I don't know. But I think that's really interesting to see that. And I think this last letter here kind of sums up where a lot of us were during this time. You maybe invested in a 3DO. This particular reader wrote in saying, what about this M2 expansion? And should I wait and invest in that because the Saturn's going to cost this much? And I don't think that's really changed these days. I think the biggest thing is that I'm older and I'm adult and I have a job, and you budget out how you're going to justify this stuff. But back then, you had such limited resources. I mean, as we saw, they were talking about the launch of their website just happening. And so you relied on these magazines to find the marketplace, to buy things you couldn't get where you lived, or to give you a preview of a new system, to look at reviews. And nowadays, we don't just look at blurry still pictures of games. We wait for gameplay footage to launch. And so I just really loved flipping through the pages of this magazine. It's been a while since I've looked at this one, and I think it's a very interesting time in history for video games. There was a lot out there. We barely even talked about some of the systems that it covers in here. So I think I'm kind of just scratching the surface, even with this particular magazine. And I can't wait to maybe thumb through some more and share this with you, because I think it's a really, really interesting case study in history, in the history of video games. So this is where I want to hear from you. Did you flip through the pages of these magazines in the 90s? Did you have another outlet that you went to outside of Electronic Gaming Monthly? I would love to know. Tell me if you saw anything in there that really caught your eye, that you forgot about or never knew about. I know there were a few things in here for me that kind of touched on both categories. So, again, if you haven't already, take the time to check out some of my other content. If it has to do with movies, video games, toys, music, I'm probably going to end up talking about it here on my channel. And it's like I always say, be kind as you rewind and fast forward through time. And thanks so much for stopping by.